And speaking of the reality of our topics, tonight we branch into a new area, and that is poetry. And our first poet I am pleased to have on is Jan Worth. Jan is a poet from the Flint area. She has published a book of poetry along with a number of other poems that have been published in a variety of publications. And she has won the Michigan Creative Writers Award. She has a grant that she had to. Actually, someone paid her to write poetry, which is a rarity. Jan, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What draws you to poetry?
Well, I came to poetry after having a bachelor's degree in journalism and working for newspapers early in my adult life. And I was attracted to newspaper writing for some of the same reasons. I think the two are connected. I like the short line. I like getting right to the point. I like being able to develop a plot in a short, concise form. I'm very attracted to that.
Is it the economy of poetry that...
It's partly the economy, and it's also partly the emotion. Trying to combine feeling and economy is a real trick.
Yeah. Give us a little bit about your background in journalism. Let's start there. What sort of work did you do in the newspaper business?
I started working for all of my whole newspaper career was in Southern California. I started working for a paper. I was actually hitchhiking in Laguna Beach, California in 1971, and I was picked up well, that's not going to sound right. I was hitchhiking, and I was given a ride by the editor of the Laguna Beach paper, and so I ended up finding out that they had a job opening there, and I worked there and did everything that you had to do to keep a paper going for. It came out twice a week for about 2 years, and then I moved to a daily newspaper called the Orange Coast Daily Pilot. It was a wonderful experience. I did news reporting and then some feature writing, some copy editing before I left. So it was about 5 years altogether. That was a daily newspaper, the second one.
In that kind of situation where you're not overly specialized on a weekly paper, what part was the most fun?
Well, for me, and I think this relates to what's happened with my writing since, I really enjoyed I enjoyed interviewing people. I enjoyed the feature part of it. Also, though, I finished my journalism career working on the copy desk where I was writing headlines. And if you think about it, you write headlines 4 or 5 hours a day under deadline pressure. There's some connections to poetry.
Sure, almost like a haiku. You have to tell the story in 6 words or less.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed that part too.
So what brought you back to the Midwest?
I came back to go to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Actually, I'd never been much to Michigan, but I came back to go to school there, and then I've been here ever since. So.
How'd you get up to Flint?
For a job, which was amazing, because it was in 1981, which was the year when everyone was leaving. I came here. I was the lemming that went the opposite direction. But I got a job working here, and I've been here ever since. So Flint has always kept me employed, which is unusual. Are
you still writing? I mean, in your work, I mean.
In my work? Well, I work for U of M Flint, as you know, and about as close as I get there is putting out a newsletter every 6 times a year. So gives me a chance to do a little bit of that. Okay.
Well, let's talk about the process of poetry. When you started writing, probably a long time ago, well, at what age did you start writing?
Like most poets, I think I've been writing ever since I was little.
Do you remember the first piece of work that stuck with you? I mean, how far back can you remember a single piece and that you say, well, that was worthwhile, you know?
That I wrote or that someone else wrote?
That you wrote.
In terms of a poem, the first poem I got any attention for was actually drastically rewritten by my father. I wrote a poem when I was about I must have been in 7th grade or so, and it didn't rhyme properly, and it didn't scan properly, and my father got a hold of it, coming from the old school. He wanted it to be very orderly, 4 stanzas, 4 lines, A, B, A, B, and he got that thing to be A, B, A, B, and people loved the poem, and my father never told anyone that he basically rewrote it. So that's the first one I remember. I've been wary of rhyming ever since.
You know, it's fun though. I find that when I play with words, and my writing is very much play, it is sometimes fun to accept the discipline.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
go back and try and work out the rhythm patterns and everything. And sometimes the discipline creates the most amazing breakthroughs. When you have to have a word that sounds like that, something will just appear, and it's amazing.
It becomes, you go outside of the logic, don't you, and the coherence, and you find some surprising things. Yeah, well, it took me about 30 years to figure out that rhyming didn't have to do with my father, see. So once I made that, once I broke that connection, then I could experiment with form again, too.